What is up, guys? Delboy here. So I didn't get a chance to do post-fight videos for the fights that took place this weekend. I was out Saturday night, otherwise engaged, had great success, just saying. But yeah, I didn't get a chance to do post-fight thought videos, and I've only really just caught up now. I am going to briefly run through the weekend's action and share my thoughts. We will start with the card that took place in the UK. That was the Frank Warren card on BT, featuring Anthony Yarde versus Akira and more. I've actually already made a post-fight thoughts video for Yarde versus Akira. That's on my channel, you can watch that. But briefly, Yarde, I felt he did what he had to do, but I did feel there were some defensive flaws there, on the inside especially. And basically, I would like a slight step up ultimately. But he did the job. He looked pretty good at times. What more can you really say about that fight? Special shout out to Johnny Garten versus Gary Corcoran. This was an excellent fight for the vacant British welterweight title. Tremendous fight. Bloodbath, brawl, thrills and spills. Brilliant fight with a late stoppage. And Johnny Garten becomes the new British welterweight champion. That really is a contender for domestic fight of the year. It's a shame about the crowd trouble at the end of the fight, but, what can you do? What can you do? But, yeah, great fight. Also on that card, Bradley Skeet bounced back with a comeback victory over a journeyman, and Zach Chelly, who is a super middleweight prospect, he beat fellow prospect Umar Sadiq in quite a good fight. So yeah, that card was okay, I suppose, but not great. We will now move on to the World Boxing Super Series card. Yulia defeated Matias Masterneck by a unanimous decision. That was actually a really good fight. I said in my prediction video that I felt that would gel quite well. I picked Dorticos in that fight. I think I might have picked stoppage though. But, Masterneck, he was getting beat up in the first few rounds. But after the first few rounds, Dorticos, his stamina issues came into play again. And Masterneck gave Dorticos all he could handle later on in that fight. I felt that fight was very close. Again, I didn't score it. But, I felt it was really competitive, really close, thoroughly enjoyable. And Dorticos got the nod. But a really good fight. Another really good fight on that card. Emmanuel Rodriguez versus Jason Maloney. Rodriguez had a lot more problems in this fight than I imagined. I felt Maloney, although he lost this fight in my opinion, he really did give it a good go. He was applying pressure. The bodywork from Maloney late on was really affecting Rodriguez, and he made it a tough night. He really did. Jason Maloney deserves a lot of credit, and going forward, I want to see him fight again, to be quite honest with you. I was really impressed with Jason Maloney. I had seen a bit of him before this fight, and in my prediction I did say that I was impressed with some of his game against Koei Kono, but I never really expected him to give Rodriguez that much of an issue. But, he fought a really good fight. I felt the right man won. I felt Rodriguez was boxing well at times. He was landing some clean shots. But as the fight wore on, he really made it tough for Rodriguez. Maloney comes out of that fight with a lot of credit, as far as I'm concerned. Mike Perez defeated Keith Tapia on that card also. I felt Tapia was a bit too negative. In the first few rounds he was moving about, trying to outbox Mike Perez, and in the first few rounds you could have argued he won a couple of those, but after a while Perez started to close the distance. He started to work the body of Keith Tapia and slow him down, and eventually Perez just kind of won the fight based on aggression and work rate, and being the more he was taking the initiative. So Mike Perez won the fight by a unanimous decision, and I felt that that was the correct decision, to be quite honest. So credit to the judges for getting that right. We then move on to the Boston card. Obviously that was the DAZN card, the Eddie Hearn card. Tevin Farmer defeated James Tennyson by a stoppage. I think that was like 4th or 5th round. Tevin Farmer, I felt, looked quite sharp in this fight. I felt he looked pretty good defensively in this fight. He was working the body very well. And, that's how he got the stoppage victory. Some crunching body shots dropped Tennyson, and that was all she wrote. Good performance from Tevin Farmer. They are talking about a fight with Gervonta Davis. I've got to be honest, I think Gervonta Davis will take care of Tevin Farmer in relatively good fashion, but that's just my opinion. I think Tevin Farmer is a good fighter, but if we're talking about the elite in that division, I don't really think he can beat anybody like top 5. I really don't, but that's just my opinion. Also on that card, Demetrius Andrade defeated Walter Aqua. He won that fight by a unanimous decision. I felt in the first 4 or 5 rounds, Demetrius Andrade looked amazing. I felt he looked really good. He looked really dynamic, really quick, boxing very well. I think he dropped Aqua about 4 times. He was looking really good early on. Then he picked up a shoulder injury, and at that point he decided to coast and just keep it long, keep it at range, and play it safety first. Even when he was doing that, he was still winning all the rounds. So I felt it was quite a good performance from Andrade. If he didn't pick up the injury, I think he would have got the stoppage victory, to be quite honest. But early on, I was really impressed with Demetrius Andrade. And I've got to say, that Andrade from the first few rounds, Billy Joe Saunders would have had his hands full. Believe me, he really would have. So maybe Billy Joe has dodged a bullet by failing a drug test, who knows. But yeah, I felt Andrade in the first 5 or 6 rounds, he really looked the part. And when he got injured, he couldn't really take the risks he was, so he had to coast. Decent performance from Andrade. Kid Galahad defeated Clary. That was an IBF final eliminator for the featherweight title. That is obviously held right now by Josh Warrington. He is going to be fighting Carl Frampton. So Kid Galahad, in theory, should fight the winner of Frampton versus Warrington. I mean, Kid Galahad, he boxed pretty well. He did what he had to do. Didn't really pull up any trees. Clary was quite awkward, I've got to be honest. But Kid Galahad, it was workmanlike. I've seen nothing to suggest that Kid Galahad beats Carl Frampton. I think Carl Frampton is going to beat Josh Warrington. I certainly don't think Kid Galahad can defeat Frampton, but even Josh Warrington, I think he might struggle with the pace and work rate of Warrington, to be quite honest. I'm yet to be convinced about Kid Galahad. A lot of people in the UK rate him. I'm not sure, I've got to be honest. Katie Taylor defended her lightweight titles. Again, I'm not particularly bothered about that, didn't watch it. Tommy Coyle picked up a victory in a really entertaining fight. Scott Quigg was also on the card in a stay busy fight. He got the job done quite early, he looked good, and he got the victory. And, Daniyar Yelusanov, again, prospect at welterweight, he was also on the card, and he won his fight by a TKO. And last but not least, we go to the top rank card, headlined by Murata versus Rob Brandt. This was the upset of the weekend. Murata going into that fight was the WBA World Middleweight Champion, and Rob Brandt beat him, and he beat him well. I think Rob Brandt threw over 1,200 punches. He was really, really active in this fight. He was like a buzzsaw, he boxed well, and, he clearly won this fight. I was really impressed, actually. I didn't really give him much of a chance going into it. However, a couple of people on my video that I made about this fight prior to it actually gave him a chance. So credit to those guys, they saw something I didn't. And yeah, Rob Brandt looked actually quite good. He looked a hell of a lot better in this fight than he did against Jürgen Brähmer. So credit to Rob Brandt for really showing out. He put on a really good display, and he deserves credit for it because he was not supposed to win that fight. And yeah, really good performance. That is performance of the weekend, for my money anyway. Also on that card, you had a few prospects. Featherweight prospect Michael Conlon was in action. He got a TKO victory. I felt he looked okay. Fellow featherweight prospect Vladimir Nikitin was on the card. He won a unanimous decision. He looked okay. He looked workmanlike, but again, nothing really stood out in that fight for me. Also on the card, super lightweight prospect Maxim Dadashev. He defeated Antonio DeMarco by a unanimous decision. Pretty much won every round. And that pretty much sums up the weekend's action. Some good fights, some decent stoppages, you know, decent weekend of boxing. Sorry I couldn't make post-fight thoughts videos for each and every fight. I just didn't have the time this weekend, unfortunately. What did you guys make of this weekend's boxing? Peace.